I would like to welcome Gigi sir for the welcome address.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session. It's my privilege to introduce and welcome today's presenter, Dr. Sebastian Joseph, Associate Professor, Department of History, Union Christian College, Aluva. He is a man with an impeccable academic track record and outstanding academic achievements. A triple gold medalist in history and the recipient of Charles Wallace Grant of the British Council. He is a man known for his passion for teaching. His areas of specialization include environmental history and film history. He has authored a number of texts, the most appreciated one being Cochin Forests and British Techno-Ecological Imperialism in India. He is the General Secretary of Kerala History Congress, an umbrella organization of the history fraternity in the state of Kerala. There is no denial of the fact that COVID has divided the world into pre- and post-COVID periods. If history writing is a craft, now we can hear from a master craftsman about the metrics and social implications of the pandemics. Over to you, sir, for the presentation. Thank you.
Sir, you are not audible.
Thank you very much, Gigi Joseph sir, for the brief introduction. And also thank you, Tony sir, for the invite. At the outset, I wish to thank St. Mary's College management, principal, faculty members, and the whole academia for this invite to deliver my talk on the metrics of the pandemics on corona times. Basically, I'll be looking at the pandemics, which is a very unusual and unprecedented occurrence in the history of human civilization in the 21st century. It reached in December 2019 in China, and it got transmitted to the entire globe, thereby emerging as the pandemic. A pandemic that became a real problem, and the solution of the problem is still not achieved. The whole world is trying towards that. So here, as I told you, this is an unprecedented time, and as Gigi sir pointed out, there is a pre-COVID time and a post-COVID time. But better for me that I wish to stand in the COVID times, because we have not reached the post-COVID times, nor we are in the pre-COVID times. All the temporal spatial dimensions of the human world, life world, has undergone a revolutionary change in that sense within 2, 3, or 4 months maximum. So here my duty is, as Gigi sir said, as a history teacher and as a researcher and as a historian, I wish to look at the COVID times from the standpoint epistemology of social scientific, using a social scientific lens. I would like to make certain statements. I don't say that these statements are true or false, but certain statements which can be considered something like a parenthesis, it is to be tested by other studies, and it is to be tested both from inferences from the pre-COVID times and the post-COVID times. That I am trying to look at certain changes in the social matrix, the highway of social life, as you witnessed today. And my perspective is entrenched in an international context, and therefore wish to look at the present times as an international or universal event with much significance for a person living in a city or in a town or in a village or in a forested area or even in a desert. There is no distinction and differentiation. The time has come. Of course, there are differentiation in the way in which people live and people suffer. But anyway, whatever be the thing, it has become a universal event, a ubiquitous phenomena, not a unique phenomena in that sense. And I talk with the conviction that, most of the people, have a general tendency to look at history as a discipline, or historians as persons who are not supposed to talk about COVID times and its implications. But I am talking here with a conviction, with a firm conviction and firm belief that history as a discipline. My subject is not a subject that study the past, but the present from the mirror image of the past, however mutilated or incomplete or fictitious the image is. So my position taking in that sense is, as you know, is a position taking of a historian come social scientist. And the inferences which I am going to present before you are inferences which I have articulated through my observations during the COVID times, not the pre-COVID times and the post-COVID times. During the COVID times, it is something like a climbing over the milk tank or a milk van, climbing over a milk van, and the disappointment or the shock that you feel once you see that milk is not there, but some other liquid is there with a totally different color. So during this time, I think social scientists and scientists, artists, and all kinds of people are finding that the milk one does not contain the milk, but some other liquid. This is a total transformation in that sense. And to begin with, I wish to present before you certain things. That is, the first thing that I wish to present before you is a material, that is the mask. Now you are experiencing the masked world. And the masked world has become very normal and usual. Isn't it? Do you think like that? Because, whenever you look at a masked man with a face mask, you think that he's an unusual person, but it has become very usual in that sense. It's a very symbolic, semiotically, it produces a very different kind of meaning. When I say that, a person's home is a big pipe. A person's home is a big pipe. So in the same way, mask has become something, very normal in that sense, even though wearing mask was unusual and abnormal not normal in the pre-COVID times. Now in the COVID times, it has become very normal. And the second concept, it is not a material, it is a concept, or sometimes you can consider it as an ideology. It is social distancing. I will elaborate on that. And the third concept is a historical concept deeply embedded in the historic times. It can be considered as a historical artifact or a text in that sense, deriving its meaning from a Latin word, Trentino, which we call as quarantine today these days, 40 days fasting. Fasting in the wilderness, because certain biblical implications are there. Jesus fasting in the wilderness for 40 days. So let me come to the first artifact or material, which has changed the face of the social life in that sense. A simple, for containing a virus or containing the spread of a disease, If you look around the world, you see different kinds of masks these days, And you can also understand how certain cultural identity is being adapted into its making the mask. I read from newspapers that in Amazon, you have people who make masks with banana leaves after steaming it in order to make it more flexible, because they're not getting other masks for survival. You can purchase masks prepared by the Todas of the Nilgiris, The Todas of the Nilgiris have come up with beautiful masks with embroideries in the sides, in its side part, in the upper part or lower part, with the beautiful embroideries which explicate the cultural identity of the Todas of the Nilgiris, which are accessible for us through an NGO which is called the Last Forest. And you can also have any type of mask with any different colors and different styles and patterns. Yesterday, it was in the news that you can go to a studio and get your this part of the face implanted to a mask in order to make you more visible in that sense. Because wearing a mask, it is very difficult to identify a person. I am only apprehensive of masks designed in future, maybe sometimes with certain caste affiliations in India in future, because it has become an easy way to propagate an ideology, whatever be the nature of the mask that you use today. So masks in this way have become a cultural artifact for the time being, which is serving a medical purpose. As far as it serves a medical purpose or health objective, a community objective in that sense for the maintaining the health of the people, it is therapeutic, it is not harmful. But once its use takes a deviant turn in that sense to segregate or malign or identify differences and to make people different in that sense, the mask become really problematic. So in that sense, masks receive, a kind of, meaning in the present social world. And the meaning that we give to mask in the present world may change in the coming times when it assumes, certain different codes which will be encoded to understand this type of segregations and differentiations. But as of now, nobody is sure about the discontinuation of the mask culture because the vaccine is not ready. Scientists are trying to discover the vaccine. So as of now, mask is very normal and it is very usual. Now, the next phenomena or the concept, the social phenomena, which is called the social distancing. Social distancing is actually, to the best of my knowledge and understanding as a social scientist, I think more than social distancing, what we practice now is physical distancing in that sense. You are making a proclamation to the society around you, touch me not. I am not going to touch you and you are not supposed to touch me in that sense. This is also, it's a very spasmodic event, something like a very ephemeral event. Just happened yesterday, but just opposite to that, when you look into the pre-COVID times, you see that, what you were doing in that, intensive social integration in that sense, in such a fast manner, as if, today we are experiencing that, something that you were moving towards the north direction in the pre-COVID times. In the COVID times, you are seeing that you are not going to the north, but you are going to the south. So such immediate turn of events have happened in history, all on a sudden. That's why I told you, this is an unprecedented reversal of the social life. And social facts have changed in that sense, sometimes leading to a new disciplining process whereby the humans are trained in the art of a new kind of living. And social distancing in that sense, also led to certain reconfigurations about the existing knowledges and perceptional modalities about certain important things which decided your life in the pre-COVID times. For example, the calendar. The calendar in the pre-COVID times, it decided your day, its schedules and everything. But today, when a person is rising from the bed, usually, he's not knowledgeable about what day is today and what is the date today. Suppose somebody is asking you what day is today, you are totally confused and you have to check your mobile phone, which is your very intimate ally. These times also during the COVID times also to see that what is the date today. So the significance attributed to calendar has changed vitally during this period. I am only presenting certain concepts which I have really experienced. So calendar is a different thing for you. Calendar, which was very much with you all the days in the pre-COVID times, has become, something of a very different character or nature these days. Because the days and the schedules have no meaning in that sense. You are working in the office. Now you are working from the home. be it the entrepreneur, be it the software engineer, or be it the teacher. They are working from the homes, using your telephone, using your electricity, and using your space, and without incurring any spending or expenditure on the part of your employee. It's very interesting to know that the capitalist implications of work from the home is also it will have deeper implications in the future times. And then you just look at timetables. What is timetable now? Timetable has become something like an obsolete. I am talking about the COVID period in that sense. Very spasmodic, very ephemeral, maybe 2 or 3 months that the world is experiencing. The timetables have become obsolete things in that sense. The timetable have become an archaic thing in that sense, which is used something like a past document in that sense. You can go through the timetable to see that what was your old life in that sense. Timetable assumes a different signification in these days. And now you just look at the concept of distance in that sense. At 2,000 kilometers, it was a long way for you to walk. Nobody dreamt about that. Now people are walking 3,000 kilometers, 2,000 or 3,000 kilometers. People are walking to reach their homes. What is the consciousness of distance in that sense? It is not a great distance. It is not a big distance because the humans can't see their kith and kin, their dear ones, and to see how they live in that sense. So distance are lower. So notions about these are all very usual things. All these usual things have become very unusual things in that sense. That is it. Usual things have become unusual, produce a different kind of meaning, a different kind of epistemological understanding of the humans or the humans' perception about their own existence in the planet, calendar, timetables, distance. How it happened? How the teachers are distanced from the students. The webinar that we are doing now, we could have done it before December 2019. But we are doing it right now. Many people are doing webinar, and so many people criticize also why these people are going online. Tomorrow everything will be online and people will be losing their jobs in that sense. Many accusations are coming against these kind of exercises in that sense, especially online teaching. So this is actually a pandemic effect in that sense. During this time, this particular event, you are discussing it. Online classes and especially when pertaining to the higher education scenario, online classes have become a very fashionable thing. Okay, people are vying with each other, competing with each other in making them present before the students. And I don't know whether the students are most desirous of seeing the teacher in the COVID times through the online. Perhaps that is a very relaxing or a very relieving, appearance for the students who are sitting very much, concerned about the future in their homes in that sense. And there are new medical approaches, new foods are experimented. Indigenous medical practices are resorted to. You can see the resurgence of, what kind of an old economic system, the barter in your courtyard, you are giving coconut and you are getting jackfruit from your neighbor in that sense, And there is a tendency for people to grow more vegetables in their home yards, the home yard agriculture started in that sense, These are all certain turns which has happened within the lowest point of time, Within 2 or 3 days, something, just imagine 2 or 3 months only that these things are happening, And look at the families more attached, And I am thinking about joining the college on June 1st, with some, it is a really paining experience for me because, the bonding in the family, because the COVID has, the virus has made you sit in your family and talk to your wife and mingle with your, or play a game with your daughter or son, or talk with your aging parents in that sense, People are resorting to seeing cinema to alleviate tension. Music assumes a new therapeutic, social use in that sense. Even quarantine music bands are on the rise. And we are getting time to talk in that sense, That is, we were not talking animals inside the home. We were talking outside. When you come to the home, you naturally get muted because you are a very serious person. But you talk with your relatives, you talk with your dear ones inside your home. You have become more talking in that sense. So, what is the point that I'm arguing is that social life has entered a timetable. A timetable is a table. It's a revolving table. Once you get into the table, A person who is positioned towards the north is immediately turning towards the south. It is actually a device which was invented to keep the direction of the train changes, because only one engine, the engine has to be, it has to be moved from one side to the other side. It is to be put on a turntable. So naturally the direction of the train immediately changes. So the direction of the life, direction of social life has changed in that sense, in a rapid fire manner, in a very paced manner. Now, the third thing which I wish to present before you is the quarantine. The quarantine is the word has gained much currency these days, People who were not used to know these words, now they are saying that quarantine, everywhere quarantine, People are really concerned about quarantine. Some people are fascinated about quarantine. And people are affixing notices on the gates or compound walls of the people who are quarantined. So immediately you find that certain bodies are segregated in the modern world. Certain bodies are segregated. They are not mutilated bodies. They are not lepers, but doubt or, what you call, maybe sensibilities regarding the virus, the spread of the pandemic, they are quarantined. But quarantine is a term, it has a resurfaced. It carries a very deep historical legacy in that sense, together with the mask. It has its origins from ancient times, and certain instances are there in the Bible that, people infected were quarantined, they were left apart. Some sort of, a social alternative in that sense, to keep the person away from you, to keep the person into a distant place in that sense, It was actually a 30 days exercise in biblical times, in the medieval times initially, which is called a Trentino. It became quarantine because 40 days was, in those times, in the medieval times, considered to be the time period for the curing of the disease or healing of the disease. So it's a touch me not ideology, which became a policy of the nation states in the medieval times also, in the colonial times also. And quarantine was an effective policy to foster trade, to continue trade without incurring human casualties like deaths of traders in the medieval times, and also in the early modern times, and also in the colonial times in that sense. So it was integrated with the networking of the colonial world. It can be considered as an enforced confinement on individuals, and confinement is the worst thing that can happen to a human being in his or her life. The thought world of the quarantined men or women, the thought world of the quarantined people of our times is too similar on the same plane in that sense. So taking all these three aspects, the material as well as the social implications or concepts, the event has become unprecedented. There is a saying that in history, events are insignificant, only processes are significant. But sometimes event also assumes a great significance when it points to certain departures in the social life or meanings in social life. The mask, the sanitizers, and the social confinement all came in a fine morning. We never anticipated it, in spite of the scientific knowledge and the advanced surveillance mechanism that we were having, where the virus made the day of its own, not the humans. The virus proclaimed its victory in that sense. And this is not an end of history, and not going to be a departure in the worldly life. We are not going to see immediate departures in that sense, but an event that has posed the human civilization for a life. So, looking through my perspective, seeing through my lenses, I wish to call this pandemic as a great event of the 21st century. A great pause, to be more specific. You use your musical instruments, or you use your audio video devices and pause it for a moment. It's a great pause of the 21st century, only a pause. A pause that again pointed to the vulnerability of the human culture or civilization. A pause that paused all thinking in the world and made new orientations in thinking, creating a new matrix of the thought world of these days. That is why, I gave a title of the social matrix of the pandemics. Now, with my own reflections and also in consultation and discussion with, various scholars, and going to see or understand various thought dimensions about this particular COVID times, I am making certain arguments in that sense. One thing is that the pandemics created universalization effect. We were thinking on different planes in different countries, but now we are in the one boat. It is the virus made us to see the global for the local most intensively. When I say that we are seeing the whole world most intensively, there is a point to understand that. That is, perhaps you may be knowing about the kind of negotiations, conferences, and summits which were happening in the world. In the 1970s, right from the Stockholm Declaration, the Brundtland Commission, the conceptualization of sustainable development, the agendas for a good future or common future, the concerns of the commons, etc., like that. That brought many historians and philosophers and social scientists have argued that, it has created a consciousness which is called the planetary consciousness in that sense. A planetary consciousness of the modern world, which was generated through summits and conferences, were not able to generate an intense feeling of universality or universalization. Again, you are thinking in different boats in those times. I'm not saying that all of us will be in the one boat again in the post-COVID times, because we have seen that, during the flood times, people were saying that, now there is no communalism, people are loving each other, people are knowing each other, they will be friends tomorrow. What we have seen from the Kerala experience, up in the post-flood period is very interesting and historically very interesting, socially very interesting, just opposite, diametrically opposite to what we were expecting in that sense. The world is like that. I'm not accusing it. The world is like that. Once the pandemic is over, once the vaccine is invented, then the consciousness is lost. But as of now, there is an intense consciousness, intense thinking about the global world. That is the globe itself, the universe. So the universalization effect of the pandemics is, it is great. No summits, no conferences were able to make such a universalization. Because, to my understanding, to my knowledge, why people think that they are in one boat? Because a collective emotion, a collective trauma rules the world now. It's very universal in that sense, and the greatest democrat of the world in some sense, which is the fear. So a new emotion in that sense, of course, it has become a cultural emotion of the whole world. It is not the Americans or the Indians, not the Keralites and the Tamil Nadu people. It has become universal, what is called the fear of death. I think you might have heard from journals, or if you browse it, you can see about the dance of death, the expressive forms of arts which celebrated the dance of death in the medieval times, which the medieval times, when they were thinking about a total annihilation of the human civilization from the face of the planet Earth. Dance macabre, it was called. It surfaced in the medieval times when people started thinking about a total alienation and annihilation in that sense. But then the world was too small. Connectivity was not there as we see today. When we think about the medieval times, medieval world, the distance was not like that. People living in the Europe were not knowing how far away is India in that sense. So the distance even in Europe was great in that sense. But even then, people were unified over the cultural emotion of fear, a fear of death. Many paintings, many artistic expressions, sculptural expressions have come in the early modern times also, right, when we experienced, again, repeated invasion of the plague, Yersinia pestis. The bacteria changed the world then. Now I think it is a virus. Only changes from bacteria to the virus. People were dancing. The dance of death means everyone is dancing to the tune of the death. There is no change, no class distinction, right from the king to the serf dancing with the death. So a cultural emotion, a universal emotion of death fear is a universalization effect. That is why we are thinking more intensively about the global integration in that sense, Okay. Now, the second point I wish to make is the re-emergence of the validity or revalidation of the state, which to a certain extent lost its credibility due to malfunctioning or corruption, whatever we like that. The state again emerges as a savior of its subjects in that sense, reinforcing its valid existence or revalidating its lost position or degraded image, the recovered image of the state in that sense. Last 3-4 days back, when I was standing in front of my house at the gate, I found that the KSRTC bus is coming, and people were waving at KSRTC bus, because KSRTC bus became a hero in that sense. For example, looking at KSRTC bus, as a transport mechanism for people to survive, to go to other places in the KSRTC buses. So that's a symbol of the state, KSRTC bus. We were not having much confidence in the KSRTC bus then, but during the COVID times, KSRTC bus, emerges as the hero. Even when private bus operators are not ready to operate, the KSRTC buses started flying. So that image, the image of the state, actually KSRTC bus brings for the image of the state in that sense, And now you look at the police force also. There is a change in people's attitude and perceptions towards the police force, as people who were already obsessively engaged in law and order are now the guardians of your health. They are the security officers to maintain your health in that sense, checking unnecessary traffic or checking people who are not using masks, checking people about the destination and the time of return, things like that. So that is again the police surveillance, as it has become integrated with something with a practice to restore the health of the people in that sense. Again, police emerges as a platform or as a symbol to revalidate the concept or the ideology of the state in that sense. And similarly, you can see that the medical officers, the medical staff, of the government hospitals, especially how emerged as the heroes in the story of the pandemic, in the great story of the pandemic. So the public health system and its crucial role is glorified these days, very much, very genuinely, and we consider it as a panacea for containing these type of pandemics in the future also. That is why I think you might have read from newspapers that the Spanish government is going to nationalize all the hospitals in Spain. So there is a liberal tendency to look backward to see what was wrong with the position, what was wrong with the policy formulation of the state in that aspect. The state emerges, as a savior in that sense again. It's a reinforcement of the ideology of the state. And now you look at the question of surveillance in that sense. Look at the question of surveillance. Surveillance means, it's a kind of discipline also, disciplining your body. Now we are knowledgeable about certain biometric devices, which are used to detect the people with the infection, because the infectious body is to be segregated for the society. So as a life-saving mechanism, people are using that, and the state also supported that, in that sense. I'm talking in the global scenario, not Kerala specific or India specific. So now, like many social scientists are arguing these days, the states which are using it for the purposes of, diagnosing your temperature, diagnosing your body, whether it is infected or not, may try to detect, the internal emotions also, because this is the time of artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence is going to become a new language in that sense, and like, Yuval Harari suggested, in the future, this is the last generation of the humans in that sense. This is the most modern, post-modern, most civilized, most fine-tuned, sophisticated human mechanisms. So in the coming years, you may witness the emergence of totally different entities in that sense, So artificial intelligence is actually a starting point in that sense. It's a culmination of, the integration, dangerous integration of biotechnology with computerized technologies in that sense, We only heard, we were conscious about the genetically modified crops or biotechnology devices which permeated into our daily life in that sense. But now, as of now, that is why I told you the post period, in the post period, you have no question, you have no objection, you have no resistance and protest against the use of these surveillance mechanisms, because you know that it is for the security. It is for the longevity of the humans on the earth. So it has become a very universal phenomenon in that sense. But the thing is that once the crisis ends, and when some governments are using the same surveillance mechanism or diagnostic mechanisms for some sort of an emotional surveillance, in that sense, it becomes questionable and problematic in that sense. People, imagine if people are supposed to wear, something like a biometric bracelet, and they are finding that in the biometric bracelet will again tell the supervisors or the security officers about your emotions, in that sense. Then the governments may say that it is for containing terrorism, it is for containing communal rights, and in the course of time, you become a fully diagnosed body, both in mind and in body, in that sense. So that is the question of surveillance that is king. And the third point I wish to state is the question of nationalism in that sense. Are you obsessively engaged with the nationalism in that sense? How do you look at the maps today? When one fine morning, I was reading Malayalam daily, and I was reading the news that Ernakulam district has closed the borders. Ernakulam district is a sovereign state in that sense. A woman from Kottayam cannot enter Ernakulam district. All on a sudden day, the maps have changed. The maps of your sovereignty is redefined. It is reconfigured. You cannot say that the virus stopped at China. It need not transmit to India, or from India the Pakistan is saying that the Indian virus is to stop in India. What kind of a nationalism is it? No. The pandemic taught you that instead of nationalism, you need to internationalize. Okay. A lost, sensibility of global integration has again resurfaced there. It has become a very important focus point of debate among many social scientists, theoreticians, and politicians to think in terms of global integration. It is not globalization as such. Global integration is a different kind of, integration for existence of humanity on the face of the earth, in that sense. The one thing I wish to argue that, you are saying that we are India, we are a great nation, we have got a great national culture. So we are not going to take the vaccine for corona, COVID-19 prepared by the Chinese. Is it possible? It's not possible. So the thing is that the interdependency of the human civilization in the face of the earth is again reinforced in that sense. So nationalism is good. You have to be a patriotic person, no doubt about that. But at the same time, you have to understand that you are a global citizen these days. You are a global citizen because pandemics have no boundaries. Viruses, they fix no boundaries. They create new maps in that sense. How the Central Asian bacteria Yersinia pestis, it made the new maps of pandemic in Europe. Why? Because interconnectivities, exchanges, connectedness, the flourishing of trade, the expansion of capital, everything brings the viruses and the bacteria. That will happen in the coming days also. But you have to think in terms of an international collaboration, medical collaboration, ethical collaboration, new value formulations in the light of the pandemics. All these exercises are to be seen. It has to witness the new world order in that sense. While I was studying undergraduate in BA history in Changanashiri NSS College, for the English language, there was a text on Bertrand Russell, which talks about the world government. In those times, I thought that what an idiotic idea is a world government in that sense. I'm not arguing for a world government, but you need a global integration in that sense. Integration on a global wise is very important, and that is the point that the COVID post suggests you. Now, very differently from all these things, the COVID times have also taught me a new kind of citizenship, which I wish to call, I don't know whether it is right or wrong, as the highway citizenship. The highway citizenship. Citizens are on the highway. They are walking 2,000, 3,000 kilometers. So people who have something like a long march, If people made long marches for political purposes or social national integration, but this is not for that. They are living. They are working for the existence, the survival. And let me call them as highway citizens. You just think about the migrant workers or the lost workers, be the migrant or whatever be, they are also workers as a class in that sense. What is the fate of these workers in a country like India? How many of us have to work in the future? Now these people are working. It's not sure that you or me are to work in the coming days. So what is their economy? We are concerned about Indian economy in that sense. Indian economy, the majestic Indian economy. Euphoric statements are made about the GDP, the per capita income, the advancements, the development, the progress, the dance, the mines, and all the beautiful spectacles which you see as the malls. Even if you are not having a single pie, you enjoy the spectacle of the mall in that sense, doing window shopping in that sense. So just to think about an economy of the petty traders on the streets, the vendors, the hawkers, the vegetable sellers. So what does Indian economy say about them? The serious time for the economists to think in that perspective. The Indian economy is invisible. The invisible Indian economy that led to the highway citizenship in that sense. Even then, Indian policy formulators forget them. You can see the proposals and the panacea that has come from the nation state, from the government, giant declarations, big declarations, saluting big companies, big industries, things like that. Only mega narratives are there. These little stories are nullified. So economic planners have to think in terms of an Indian economy on the highway also. So the real Indian economy is also the real economy of the working citizens on the streets as vagabonds. It may be suggested, I'm not taking it as a right point to explain a different economic concept in that sense, which is developed by Naomi Kleiner in her work Disaster Capitalism. This centers on the exploitation of national crises like disasters or upheavals, or even the Katrina cyclone, hurricane can lead to establishment of controversial and questionable policies, while citizens are excessively distracted emotionally and physically also distracted, and to engage because the citizens are not in a position to engage or develop an adequate response. To put it in simple terms, it is like, convening or organizing food festival when 99% of the people are starving. The food festival of the rich for the rich. And the food festival itself becomes a spectacle to showcase that, there is adequate food there with the nation state or with the institution. But you are not having a single pie to buy the food, It just is created as a facade of, progress or development in that sense. Disaster capitalism. Again, the theory of disaster capitalism has surfaced, and people are thinking and ruminating over the new kinds of capitalism. Because capitalism is not going to decline. Capitalism has become a world system, as Sebastian argued. It has crossed the different continents. It has come through different phases. It has adapted to various environments. So as a world culture, as a global culture, world system is emerging. And like Piketty says, the capitalism creates inequality, but again, capitalism is servant in that sense. So these are some important points that we need to understand. Now, coming to certain other subfields, for example, the multiplicity of the number of online courses or the fear in the minds of many good teachers about education going online and teachers becoming obsolete artifacts in the museum of higher education. And most of the aided colleges have to become museums like that, some statements made by some politicians. There is a threat to normal teaching education, teacher education in the world now. And people are thinking in the lines of technological determinism, where robots can replace the teacher, and a human teacher, the presence of a human teacher will be nullified in the coming days. So much of human cry are there with regard to online education or the education, the prospects of education in the coming days. Now, I recently read a wonderful article in the Hindu which states about the medical education. A doctor has written that, medical education has to be humanized in that sense, because surveys and statistics have found that, people who studied humanities or literature are more humane in that sense. I'm not saying that, people who study or teach physics or commerce are not human beings, but the thing is that it has to come in the curriculum. It has to come in the curriculum. So he argues that in the medical curriculum as well as in the teaching method, it still has to come. A new value system has to come to promote the humaneness of the doctor, the humaneness of the doctor to see the patient not just as a site of disease, but also as a site of human emotions in that sense, especially in the pandemic world. So even in the post-pandemic world, post-COVID world, I prefer to call it as the post-21st century pandemic world. There are umpteen number of, or visionary statements made by people these days because people are thinking. I think that the post time is the best time for thinking. Most of the best ideas are born in solitary confinement. Antonio Gramsci wrote his magnum opus, The Prison Notebook, in solitary confinement, in 33 notebooks. Fernand Braudel, the greatest historian of the Mediterranean, of the entire world, had there been a Nobel Prize for history, it would have gone to Fernand Braudel. There is a saying like that, He wrote a wonderful work, Mediterranean, while he was in prison. And therefore he said that, it was for the imprisonment that I wrote the history of the Mediterranean. Otherwise, it would have been a different work. So it gives ample opportunity for people like you and me, the commons also can think and come forward with electrifying, transforming notions of, notions or views about the life, sustainability, things like that, not only governments and institutions in that sense. Now you look at the film world, there are, news that, films are going to be released online. Theater owners are actually they are afraid. At the same time, I am not concerned about the theater owners. Of course, the theater owners, they also find it very difficult. There are also people like us, who make an earning. But just to think, when the films go online, it will definitely create, two types of cinematic citizens, citizens who enjoy the cinema through the Amazon Prime or Netflix, whatever we like that, and the citizens who are in the wild, who are not having access to any kind of these technologies, viewing the old films or reading novels in that. So aesthetically, you are going to segregate a particular community because of the use of or the overuse of expensive technology, which in one way it contains a particular problem, in other way it open up again a social problem. These are the larger implications or two sides of the same coin, as if people say like that. Now, very interestingly, we are seeing that marriages, 50 people are to assemble in a marriage, 50 people are to assemble for a funeral. What we were used to in the pre-COVID times, celebration of marriages, celebration of wedding ceremonies, engagements the day before, and even celebration of funerals in that sense. People were vying with each other to invite the largest number of guests or participants for a marriage ceremony. Suppose the person is inviting 1,000, the next person is saying that I invited 1,250. The other one says that the dish per dish it was priced at 1,000, and this person will see that this is 1,500. Ecologically, I say that ecologically and socially profligate behavior. It is sheer profligacy in that sense, You have come. These are all individual exercises in that sense. Need not be institutionalized in that sense, Don't think that government is going to pass a regulation in the future also containing the or restricting the number of participants in a wedding as 50 or 100. You cannot do that. But individually, familiarly, you can do that. The individual also is to correct. Individual may not look at the system to correct itself in that sense. For example, in the way in which you manage your waste in a waste society. The modern society is a waste society, which wasted much enough, like conducting all these extravagances, Just remember about the French nation in the revolution times, when historians say that about 99% of the people died of starvation, poverty. 1% of the people died of indigestion. That statistics, that's a very alarming statistics in that sense, denoting or pinpointing, implicating the serious ills of the modern economy. Be it in America or in India, it happens like that. So individually, we need to correct ourselves in that sense. But Tony, can you, tell me what time is now? Did I exceed in time?
Yes, sir. You have exceeded somewhat 4 or 5 minutes.
Within
No
5 minutes,
problem. You can conclude. Okay, okay. No problem, sir.
within 5 minutes, I will conclude. Is that okay?
Okay, okay, sir. It's okay.
Okay. So let us start with the question. Now everybody is asking, everybody is saying that humans are responsible for the corona pandemic. Spontaneously in most of the cases, the answer comes as a human factor, the overambitious human, consumerism, other traits of the humans in that sense. So the overall projection from the point of view of my point of view, that the projection is on the human as perpetrators of some violence, and consequently the nature deteriorates and produces viruses and bacteria, which is often feared as reason for the imminent annihilation of the present human culture or civilization, as we call the present civilization. So here I would like to look at a systemic problem in that. You need not look at the humans as the problem, but it is a rationality which is enmeshed in scientific advancement, a rationality which is enmeshed in commercial expansion, a rationality which is decided by terms and conditions of the capital, people who possess capital, and its use, a rationality which is articulated and circulated by different governments in different regions. And what are the humans in that? Just the toy in this rationalization process. So putting the onus on the humans is not the right kind of thing. You have to see that beyond the humans, there is a system which pervades and which makes you as instruments. Like you Habermas says, it is the instrumental rationality produced by the system. When you think that this is not the right kind of thing that I am supposed to do, I am doing that again because it is a system's rationality. Whenever you look at the system is correct in that sense. So these days, the system also revalidated itself and becoming again producing a profound meaning in that sense. Now, coming to totally different thing, I wish to say that the humans have also they were also using or following the making of the stories in that sense. Story means not the story as you read in a book, in a novel, or in a short story, or the story of the cinema, but something like that, the stories of economic planning, the stories of development, the stories of emancipatory education, etc., etc. Big stories of scientific revolution. So it all comes from the imagination of the humans in that sense. So what is my point is that imagination coming to a pause for the time being in that sense. People who were imagining the world in a manner, in a normal manner, are now imagining the world in a different manner. So there comes the collision between an objective reality and objective or subjective reality, and the collision with the fictitious reality caused by a fictitious understanding of your circumstances or the context in that sense. So concluding my talk, I wish to argue the argument that the greatest pause that have come to the 21st century is the pandemic. It is just a pause. It is not a new beginning. It is not an end. Secondly, confinement again revisited the planet Earth. Confinement, in spite of all the progressive medical research or health research that become made, scientific advancement become made, confinement stands as the therapeutic, even prophylaxis for this kind of pandemics, even in the modern society. We need to refine or redefine the distance that we have traveled from the medieval times to the modern or the post-modern times, the COVID times. Thirdly, we create science, we create stories, and we create certain fictional realities that really surpass the hard realities, which are really objective, and people can become more philosophical in these particular post times. Fourthly, the vulnerability of the poorest sections of society is again visible in that sense. The vulnerability of the poor people segments. They are again asking the same question they asked during the Narmada Bachao Andolan. Are we the only people to suffer for the wrongs of the notions of development? Are we the only people to sacrifice for capitalism? The visible traits of disaster capitalism again re-emerging. And fifthly, humans is not the issue here. It is the rationality of the system, as I said, or the gadgetization of humans is the process that is undergoing. And then the next reading is that obsession with technology. Now you are also obsessively engaged with technology. Already you are obsessed with technology, but now the technology has invaded into your minds as a savior, in that sense. One who keeps surveillance, one who detect, the viruses or diagnose the diseases in that sense, one who prescribe for the society. Technology has become something like, an emancipatory ideology in that sense. So obsession with the technology is reinforced in the COVID times again. That tendency also is to be seen very seriously. And the individual can become a change agent. There is a lesson which I study personally, reducing the extravagances and the spending culture and thinking about a new world order on an individual plane. And lastly, the futurist leanings of the society. We are all concerned about the future and how far these futurist leanings are to be reflected in the policy formulations of the nation states or the institutions in the present human, but means in the present human world is to be seen, and no futuristic, what you call prophetic announcements can be made at this point of time, because many prophetic announcements made in the earlier pandemic instances have fallen short of adequate vision in that sense. But it is a good pose for you and me, for the entire global human community, for a change. Thank you. So I have stopped my lecture. Tony?
Yes, sir. Now it's time for discussion. You can write your doubts in the chat box so that Sebastian sir can attend it.
Questions will come in the chat box, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It will come in the chat box.
I think no questions are coming. One question has come, a very different and awesome talk. So one question, what will you preferring, a seminar or a webinar? Okay. The thing is that both seminar and webinar are only certain intellectual exercises. The rubric only changes, but the pattern of what you call the transmission always remains the same. But the seminar, when you say about the seminar, you think that the close physical proximity is there. So when you think about a seminar, if there is a close physical proximity, you can see, you can understand the emotion of the audience. You get the charging of the audience, the spirit of the collective intellectual, what you call transactions inside a seminar room. I prefer seminar. But webinars are also important in the sense that when seminars cannot happen in a virus-ruled world, webinars are the platforms which I prefer. So thank you. Now, Raghunathan has asked a question: how policies are going to be affected? And Raghunathan, again, that's a very important question, a futuristic question. Many people are asking this: how policies are going to be affected? I rather would like to invert this question and to give an answer: how humans are going to be affected in the post-COVID period. That would be a very different question for us in that sense, because policies definitely, the systems and institutions, regimes of control will definitely take into account these type of pandemics. But the policies it will affect people from on different planes in that sense. For example, policies concerning the poor, policies concerning the middle class, policies concerning the rich. There is a very clear distinction. There is a very clear distinction in that sense. But the most important thing is that, as I already argued in my talk, it is a great pose for the policy formulators to learn lessons, rather than creating fancified and fabricated stories of development or futuristic courses, which will again lead to divides, both economic, psychological, political, and social in that. So it's a very ambiguous thing that is going to happen. I'm not making any. That's why I told you that I'm not making any prophetic, arguments about that. But I am hopeful as a social scientist. I am hopeful that the world, the leadership now, even though there are many, remarks and comments about the kind of degenerated leadership that, or the global leadership that has failed in containing these diseases all over the world, pinpointing certain nations. Even then, there is hope, because the humans will definitely reorient and redefine their story. And they reorient and redefine their stories in quotes, dictionary stories, and that will come in the form of new policies and dimensions. No doubt about that. Thank you, Rekananthan, for the question. Shindo VP, don't you think we are still unequipped, especially in the field of education, to deal with post-COVID scenario, both teachers and students? Will we see more empty classrooms and filled classrooms in that sense? Yes, this is a concern. I was, thinking about, a particular scenario when a teacher is entering the class and looking at the desks and benches, the teacher understands the significance of the student, Like the student who is sitting in his home without his friends and associates in the classroom, without a loving class atmosphere, he is listening to the online lectures. Very, very differentiated, approaches of pedagogy and also learning in that sense, We are equipped in that sense, but we never thought of this kind of a catastrophe in that sense. Actually, we have systems, we have structures to make institutional platforms in that sense. But none of the colleges, I think none of the colleges in Kerala thought about this kind of a problem, a crisis. That's why I told you, an unprecedented crisis in that sense. We are equipped, but at the same time, we have to take into consideration a majority of the student population in India. I'm not talking about the Kerala in general, who still suffer from deprivation. They don't have a mobile phone, they don't have a laptop, They live with slates, and they live with slates and blackboards in that sense, So how to transmit the kind of new education to the different cross sections, that is the matrix. So like the highway citizens, there are also highway students in that sense, So the state has to invest maximum resources and funds in higher education in that sense. What is happening just opposite these days, The state is going away from public education. They considered arts and science colleges as colleges which, undergo, which transmit a kind of knowledge which is inferior to the kind of knowledge that is demanded by the industry, that is demanded by the outcome-oriented, production centers, which has really remapped and reconfigured the notions of knowledge. So all these things come into question when we understand about the institutional or the nation states or states, capacity to transform the education scenario. Thank you, Shindo. Srikesh Poti has asked a question. Sir, what is your opinion about our epidemic act dealing with 21st century pandemic? That is a good question. Most of our acts, have no vision statements in that sense, All the acts and regulations were created by through an understanding of the existing realities. The pandemic actually, it has thrown open a reality, something like a very fictitious reality, which exceeded human imagination in that sense. So an imagination of the regulations you find, the clauses you find in such regulations are really obscene. Only to a certain extent they can contain a situation, a grave situation like the pandemic. It needs to be revised, it needs to be remodeled. Thank you, Srikesh Poti. Now, Rahmat has asked a question, very interesting, brother, and discussing all the aspects of money. Can it make changes in the world's capitalist economic system? Definitely, it can bring in the serious changes in the capitalist economic system. As I told you, capitalism never, succumbed to any kind of, pandemics or any kind of wars or any kind of depressions. Capitalism always reinvent, reconfigure the system because it maintains even now the world system status. It started its journey right from the medieval times in the 15th century. Now it has become a world system. But the thing is that, as I told you, one of the worst traits of capitalism, like the fiscal capitalism, as we say, when capital decides everything, or monopolistic capital deciding the fate of humanity. That is a very wrongly conceived capitalism in that sense, a wrongly conceived capitalism. So capitalism will invent, it will reorient, it will readapt. But again, one question that comes to my mind is that, whether capitalism is going to survive in that sense. It will definitely survive because it is a long cherished system, it's a long established system, which has got, deeper ramifications in the society, not only in the economic scenario, but in the cultural scenario also. There's a cultural capitalism in that sense. There is an ideological capitalism in that sense, and nobody wants to root out capitalism, but we want a reorientation of the capitalism, understanding the plight of the human, the lesser human or the ordinary human. Perhaps there can be changes and reorientations in that sense. Rahmat, thank you very much for your question. And Joel Sebastian has asked a very important question. Do you think there will be an intrinsic re-evaluation of how society's key jobs are valued in the future, especially in the context of there has been a classification between key workers and non-key workers? Do you think that there will be change in the future politics of work? Definitely. Definitely, there will be change in the future politics of work. Not only in the future, even in the present, even in the pre-COVID times, people were thinking about that. That question needs to be answered from a very different point of view of outcome-oriented education, outcome-oriented, production in that sense. So what is the outcome that you bring forth is a question that needs to be addressed in that sense. So the old utilitarian, ideas are again coming in that sense. The key workers, which they hold the key to the economy in that sense, and the non-key workers, minor, insignificant in that sense, maybe some of the traditional job scenario may undergo transformative changes in the post-COVID times. And thank you, Sebastian. Lukmanul Hakim has asked a question. You told that mask has become an important cultural artifact in COVID times. How the post-COVID time will perceive the practice of masking associated with some religious beliefs, which was considered as something retrogressive during pre-COVID. Exactly. I actually started, while I started my lecture, I also implicated about the segregation, the cornering or the propagation of certain malicious, ideas through the mask. That's why I use the term mask as a cultural and an ideological artifact in that sense. Definitely in a country like India, masks are, definitely they may promote and provoke a different kind of meaning of social meaning in the coming times. Because when the mask become an ideology other than the health concerns, it may lead to segregation, it may lead to exclusion, it may lead to identification of the opposite, the other masks in that. So the creation of the other masking society may emerge from this kind of masking society. Thank you very much, Lukman Hakim, for the question. And Suman Abraham, you have asked a question. So what is your opinion about the relevance of Gandhiji's vision of Gram Swaraj in a post-COVID period? Definitely, that's of great relevance because it has to be, this is a very serious question. It needs a wider canvas and more time. But one thing I can tell you that, the Gandhi Swaraj ideology, Gram Swaraj ideology, which met with, the concerns of the society, industrial society in the 1950s and 60s, found that the Gandhian Swaraj ideology is not an ideology that was good for, that was creative for the nation state in the emerging scenario, because that is why the Nehruvian vision definitely, submerged the Gandhian vision in that. In those times it was good, but as an ideology, Gandhian ideology can be definitely, it can transmit a different culture in that. I'm not saying that, you have to opt for a Gandhian Gram Swaraj in that sense. Such an opting is not possible these days because the industrial society or the post-industrial society has marched a long way. So systems have changed, edifices have changed, structures and agencies have changed. So you can definitely draw certain inferences and principles from an ideology like the Gandhian Grama Swaraj ideology, because it has got a much ethical and moral lesson value for the present society. Apart from that, in the formulation of certain policies aiming at this kind of ideologies, like the Gandhi Gram Swaraj ideology, needs a crucial examination by policy formulators or planners in the world, not only in India but also in the entire world. But the thing that which impact me very much from Gandhi is not his Gandhian vision of Grama Swaraj. In this context, I wish to tell you something about the non-cooperation ideology of Gandhi, not to cooperate with the highly extractive, not to cooperate with the highly, what you call, profligate society and its agency. But that is a good ideology in that sense. I am reminded of, an anecdotal statement which was suggested, commented by a philosopher, saying that if you are not ready to do what others do, it can be a right kind of cooperating with the truth in that. So non-cooperation assumes a different meaning in the present scenario. Thank you very much, Sumanama. And now one more question from Dia Shivu. As a teaching personality yourself, what is your personal opinion on educating through screens? Once we overcome the current pattern, is there a possibility that teaching online may become enough? That's a very serious question. Thank you for the question. The thing is that I am of the considered view that no machine, no technology can replace the teacher, because there is it is not a technological what a kind of transmission of knowledge that matters. But while the teacher is in the class, there are students. So the very eye contact the teacher is making with the student inside the classroom, that is really a very significant issue here. The physical appearance of the teacher, the existence of the teacher entity inside the classroom, and the integration of the teacher's ideas with the students, and the culture making and transformation is inside the classroom. Those things are not possible to greater extent in where you follow the gadgetized forms of education or online education. But the thing is that while you cannot replace the teacher, you cannot substitute any technology for a teacher. At the same time, you have to understand that in the post-modern society, in the post-COVID times, technology becomes an inevitable, essential tool. It needs to reinforce the teaching only. A good teacher can reinforce his pedagogical skills by using these kind of devices. And technology is not to enslave the teacher, but teacher has to judiciously use technological devices or apparatuses in the laboratory of what you call higher education or transmission of knowledge on a better platform by using the better means of technology, not succumbing, not subordinating himself to the technology. No technology can prevent the teacher, a good teacher, a transformative teacher. And thank you for that question. And Jijo Jairaj has asked one question. Sir, what is your opinion about the culture of fear that arose as a result of the COVID-19? Do you feel that state as a power structure reinforces the system on the subject? Definitely, there is a culture of fear. And the culture of fear is the universalizing emotion. That's why I argued in my presentation, in my lecture, that the culture of fear is the key agent in universalizing an emotion. The culture of fear means the fear of pandemic, the fear of the virus, in that sense. And we feel that state as a power structure reinforcing system on the subject. Definitely, the state, it is not an intentional reinforcement on the subjects, but it is an accidental reinforcement. But this accidental reinforcement can definitely lead to a permanent, alterations in the form of government, which may become more exploitative, more dominating, and you may get chances to see that the stage is becoming more assertive and hegemonic in future. Thank you, Jairaj, for the question. Gloria James, sir, what will be the effect of post-COVID period in various job opportunities? As of now, as I understand, This is a very, what you call, genuine question which are asked by the youth in that sense. I am of the view that, employment opportunities will be there. Every time there were risks and crises in the employment scenario, and this will definitely, this particular departure, this particular event will definitely mark serious changes in the employment sector, no doubt about that. But concerns that all the jobs will go away and the humans will become jobless people is simply a myth in that sense. So without the human resource, no mechanism, no productive mechanism, be it a material productive mechanism or intellectual productive mechanism, can proceed in that sense. So new kind of job opportunities may emerge in that sense, leading to different kind of specialization in that sense. So it is a critical time. I of course agree with you, but you can't say that this is the end of the job scenario in that sense. Thank you, Rolia James. JRPK has asked, what is the prospect of social science education in the post-pandemic era? A very, very important question. What is the prospect of social sciences? Whenever we think about the social sciences, naturally, the sciences get an upper hand, isn't it? When a student with a history option going to meet the neighbor is asking, what course you are taken? The student is responding that history. Definitely, the next question comes from the neighbor is that, did you get commerce in that? Did you get physics, economics in that sense, even English. So the thing is that people are not understanding. Now people are understanding that, when they engage with a social confinement, when they engage with a different, a foreign virus in that sense, these questions come to our mind. Or the principles of social science, the sentimental principles of social science, the ideals of humanism, the ideals of social interaction have to become ethical considerations in the curriculum planning. It is the syllabus is not just a syllabus for the sake of teaching World War and syllabus has human. Humans are the center of the civilization. If it is humans are the center, so definitely social science education is more humane, oriented approach and implications into the mindset of the students. That is why I quoted an article in the Hindu, which is written by a doctor, saying that the medical education has to become more humane. So addition of social scientific lessons in order to make the doctor more humane in that sense. Definitely, that will definitely hold much water in preserving the human culture. Thank you, Jaya, for your wonderful question. So I think questions are there. Again, Lukmanul Hakim, that's one more question. Going online has become a passion and fashion during the COVID period. Recent studies have shown that only microscopic minority has access to digital world. How we are going to tackle this digital divide? The tackling of digital divide is not a question that is to be taken on a very autonomous realm. Digital divide will be there so long as there is economic divide. So it has to be integrated with the economic divide. Buying computers and giving it to the poor people will not tackle the issue of digital divide. Because they cannot survive in an economic life, hostile economic life. As I told you, the highway citizens, the citizens who are devoid of the constitutional rights, not conscious of the constitutional rights, and who are misled by politicians in that sense. So, what is my response to this question is that a digital divide is a phenomenon which has to be addressed not digitally, not technologically, but it has to be addressed economically, it has to be addressed politically. So resolutions have to come from other agencies and forums for avoiding, for resolving the problem connected with the digital divide. Thank you, Lukman, for the wonderful question. Shabir Babu, sir, how global integration is possible in post-COVID period? Kindly discuss it. This on the background of personal use of China conflict and USA action against who WHO during the COVID. Definitely, that is a question in that sense. But what I am implicating is that not creating a China America friendly game like the you know the ping pong diplomacy, something like that. It is not like that. But in the policy formulations, the governments can come with adequate changes. The people are seeing that. Americans are seeing in America. They are also experiencing it. When America says that it is everything for America, Americans, whatever things they say, they have failed miserably there. The health scenario, the insurance scenario, the disaster capitalist scenario, etc., have told them a lot in that sense. So I am of the considered view that the demography, the population, the common people in various parts of the country, common people and also the people who are more intellectually charged, the thinkers of the world, the social thinkers of the world. So much of discussion is happening all over the world regarding this integration. So people have to think in terms of this and to form particular frames of mind and ideology for integration. We are not supposed to look always at top leaders for this type of integration. For example, you need to look at the question of or the structure of the administration of Trump in that sense. So Trump is only an individual; he will pass away. The government will change definitely. So the common people, the ordinary folk, the intellectuals, the artists, the men of letters, thinkers, how to commonly address these issues. Global integration is definitely possible. Global integration is not a distant dream. I'm not saying that boundaries will disappear and a world government or global government will come on board. I'm not saying that. I have no such utopian, thinking or ideology in my mind. But what I say, what I infer is that more than disintegration, more than segregation, or looking at your neighbor as a hostile neighbor, you have to look at him, look at the nation, the different nation, the foreign country, as a friend, as an associate, without compromising your national interest. You are not supposed to compromise. You are not supposed to compromise your national interest. But sovereignties are redefined. Maps are reconfigured by the virus. So the virus is actually teaching a lesson. You have to integrate to defeat me. The pandemic is teaching a lesson for the global leaders. You have to integrate. You have to cooperate with your brothers and sisters all over the world to defeat me. Even the virus can teach you a lesson. Maybe a lesson which is a very spasmodic, ephemeral, for the time being, lesson, but it has much implications for a post-COVID state. What is the matrix of the pandemic? By matrix of the pandemic, I mean the matrix, consider matrix as a highway for life. Factors are coming. It is not just one factor. There is a political factor. There is an economic factor. Not only the scientists can solve the issue. After discovering the vaccine, can they solve the issue? Perhaps they can solve the death rates or the casualties. But again, then the problem will definitely persist. It is assessed that even the scientists are saying that we have to live with the viruses. Corona is not going to disappear. Corona will be with you. You are burdened to Corona. A divorce is possible in your social married life. A divorce is not possible in Corona in that sense. Corona will not leave you in that sense. So the thing is that the matrix is a wider term where so many factors, multiple factors, agencies that play their game. The pandemic is to be considered as a thing in the social matrix of the social data. Thank you, Jimmy John, for the question. Kirtana, sir, is it possible to transform easily from nationalism to internationalism, especially in sense of economy and culture? No, I did not argue that it is a possibility of transfer of nationalism to internationalism. I argued that your national sentiments has to reinforce nationalism. It has to reinforce the patriotic elements. At the same time, it has to understand that your life without the rest of the world is not possible in the times. That is what the times teach you. The post-time teach you that holding your views of nationalism, goals of nationalism, you do have to think in terms of internationalization of the ideologies. So internationalization doesn't mean that you are stopping your economic activities or cultural activities. You are not going to become an ideologically what you call a super international figure or a person in that sense, appropriating all national. So many health issues will be there. They're continuously using internet and mobile phones. What is your opinion about that? That's a very interesting question as far as I'm concerned, because I consider a telephone, a mobile phone, of the in the modern world as a continuous ally with a human. Do you think that a person in America filed a case in federal court, asking the court, giving him permission to marry a mobile? So our lives are too much better to internet and mobile phones. So there are a lot of health issues connected. You can solve the health issues, once you stop the use or once you regulate the use of the internet or the mobile phones. But you cannot negate the use of mobile phones or the internet. I used to remind you about a statement made by Marshall McLuhan about the telephone invented by Alexander Graham Bell. Alexander Graham Bell's, telephone, that telephone which makes, very big sound, which is usually found in a house, in a house, in a room. Uh, they are fixed, an irresistible intrusion. I repeat, an irresistible intrusion into the privacies of time and space. The mobile phones and internet are irresistible intrusions into the privacies of time space. Without them, you cannot live in that sense. I'm not saying that you go to the forest and leave all the real natural ecosystem instead of the internet or the mobile ecosystem. But you have to tackle that. It is an individual choice. Collectively, there is no choice. Only regulatory mechanisms or prescriptions that one can make. But the humans, by and large, have become so gadgetized in that way. Gadgetized in that way. So, internet or a mobile phone has become their intimate friend and some intimate enemy at times. But even then, we embrace the mobile phone. Thank you very much, Gangasri. Ajit Cherian has asked that a new world order emerges giving more value to principles of equal humanity and more concern about environmental issues. I don't think so. Because whenever the new world emerges, the new world will definitely inherit much from the old world. That means the pre-COVID world and also the COVID world. So it doesn't mean that you are going to be environmentally very clean. You are going to enjoy a good air. You have seen that the waters have become more bluish. You have seen the oceans are less polluted. You have witnessed during the COVID times, the post time, that you can freely open your windows in the city. There is no question of pollution. But the question comes now, what can you live like? No, definitely the same frenzied, an environmentally profligate society will again emerge. But at the same time, the post time is a great lesson for environmental policy formulators to see that, giving a vacation, something like giving a vacation for the nature and natural resources will definitely restore good health, quality of life on the planet. Thank you, Ajit. I think this is a very short explanation to this question because time, I don't know whether time will permit me like that. Dr. Biju has asked, in the absence of vaccine for COVID, how much we can apply the Foucault's notion of power and knowledge and experiment normalization in the current political? Definitely, absolutely, very wonderful question. Foucault's knowledge, that's why I told you in the beginning initiation of this lecture that discipline mechanism, social confinement or social distancing is social disciplining also. It is assertion of power over the body. Again, Foucault's body also comes into question this time. The body is segregated. Which body? The quarantined body. Whether it is infected or not, that is not a question. I wish to tell you something about the quarantine in the medieval times, in the Mediterranean times, when Arabs and Asians were quarantined and they had to undergo 40 days of quarantine. But at the same time, the white sailors, the white traders used to have a relaxed quarantine because the impression in those times was that the white bodies are less susceptible to this kind of infection. So, very interesting scenario in that sense. So, disciplining the body and thereby you discipline and change the disease in that. In a wider terrain, you can understand that what the doctors and physicians are doing. They are also disciplining the body through some medicalized treatment or engagement. They are exerting their power over the body through used to X-ray, used to computer tomographies or computerized scanning. Then came the MRI scanning, the magnetic resonance imaging system. Now you have the PET scanning to locate the exact disease. What is the actual power? What is the control? The control mechanism is in the hands of the doctor. not the doctor. I'm saying in general, in specific, in general, it is the modern medicine. So modern medicine is exerting again the control of the body. But now this time, the modern medicine is also going back to the medieval times to use the same old quarantine as a new medical prophylaxis or therapeutic, way of treatment to control the body. Thank you, Viju, for the question. This is a very deep question. I cannot I have to give a lecture on that. That's it. I think you are happy with my limited question. Look, Manoj Hakim again. Do you believe that so-called health apps developed by state and imposed on people result in surveillance capitalism? Exactly. That is the question of panopticon. That is the question of gains in that sense. Definitely, all these health apps developed by the state and imposed on the people will definitely impact the body. Again, the body is subjugated. You are under gaze in that. You are on continued careful examination of an agency called the state. If in the totalitarian state, what will happen? You will definitely, suspected, and you may, chances are that your body is imprisoned in real jail in that sense. You can see the real panopticon in that sense. Continued use of these mobile apps and something. So there are problems when people come with the government come with the ads. The general public take the apps. Any apps, so many apps are there. One more app in my phone in that sense. But the app is to segregate the body. That is what people say in the panopticon. The app will be the jailer in that sense to detect you, to keep surveillance over you, to continue the gating. That's also a good question. Definitely, as you said, it may end up in a capitalism, which is, as you have rightly said, surveillance capitalism. I think questions are no more questions are there. I wish to thank the participants for the creative, intelligent questions. I never expected a plethora of questions like this because I was making certain general observation statements, based on my own inferences and understanding of the old times. And I personally thank the organizers, especially IQC coordinator, Tony sir of St.Mary's College, Marugar, Gigi Joseph sir for briefly introducing me, and the entire management staff, both the non-teaching and the teaching staff of St.Mary's College, and also the students for the invite. Thank you very much. Thank you also all the participants for the discipline listening. I think one more question has come. Can I answer this question? Tony, can I answer this question?
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Webinar can be considered as a cyber social distancing. An alternative culture is progressing along with our live real world culture. What do you think as a historian that an alternative culture would force a structural transformation in society and push by the real life culture that we practice? Also, are you satisfied with our education system? And the first question that I ask, we are trying to respond. Definitely, an alternative culture is progressing along with our live real world culture. Definitely. Such an alternative culture would force a structure. Definitely. A structural transformation is to come, from certain departures will that departures only that departures make structural changes. So I don't know what you mean by that in the question, but anyway, if the life world of the teacher, if the life world of the commoner is to survive, certain mechanisms of transformations have to happen in the life world. So the thing is that there comes the issue of a good consciousness in that sense. How do you look at a good consciousness in that sense, which emanates from the life world? Which again, that life world consciousness may also lead to the institutionalization of a certain consciousness, certain norms of behavior. Then the system world, the system rationality created by the system world can be definitely contained to a great extent in that sense. So pushing back to a real life culture, in that sense, that's a different question. In that sense. I don't know whether there is a real life culture and we are to be pushed back to the real life culture. We are not supposed to, the Homo Deus is not supposed to go back to the hunting garden state, and we are not ready to go back to the hunting garden state. Because you can go excursion to the hunting gathering state, but come back to the postmodern society in that sense. So the life culture, you are exactly. I think you mean that your implication in the question is that this is a battle between not between capitalism and life, but this is a battle between life and life in that sense. How do you perceive life? How do you make stories about life? How do you invent life? How do you give meanings to life in that sense? So the rationalization of the life world, which amounts to institutionalization on a greater platform, may lead to we call a so-called victory of the life world rationality in that sense, of the system world rationality. And again, Joshi has asked, are you satisfied with our educational system, which won't touch to prepare a student or pandemic management, which won't touch to prepare a student on pandemic management and its awareness and not even address how to face such like concept. Exactly, exactly. Our education system is a degenerated system, not a the education system is devoid of what you call the right kind of approaches to face these pandemics. Because one thing I can tell you, Yoshi, you just imagine, you just think about a rubric which is called disaster management. People are, this is a fancy these days to go to disaster management. People can take the what is a disaster management? A pandemic is not a disaster. A pandemic is a conditioned state of disease. Propelled through certain historical positive factors. And we have reached this particular point of time, and this is not a disaster. A pandemic is actually not only just a disease, but it also creates a mental consciousness. As I said, the fear culture, the fear of the things like that. So the teaching orientations that is articulated and framed by the curriculum builders or syllabus builders, actually miss the point. How healthy a student is to behave in the society. Even how to walk in the society, how to look at people, Such norms of social behavior are missing in the present education system. But the education system boasts about, making certain indexes which are actually, which are developmental indexes, whereby education is perceived as an instrument to increase the GDP for the per capita. And even the student is neglected in that. You cannot think about an organic teaching scenario inside a classroom when you follow an instrumental syllabus, completely obsessed with the utilitarian traits of outcome-based. Are you going to make students tomorrow more productive in that? What is the productivity level? A productivity in a utilitarian terrain, in a commonsensical, commercial, or economic terrain, is building up certain figures in that. But you protect the figuration of the individual in the society. How do the individual is to figure in the society, as a sensible, responsible citizen? For that, the syllabus, the curriculum has to reorient, reinvent spaces, for adding humaneness, adding traits to live in the disaster times in such a way. So health education has to become an imperative part. So what is the meaning in raising the what do you call the period or the course term of a BA course? Bachelor of Education is, I think, it is 2 years now. You are teaching and repeating all the psychological, or teaching methods and all the pedagogical skills and classroom teaching, all the tutorials. Does that make a change in the teacher? Then if that is not seen, that is not visible, what to think about the student? That is the question. So basic thing is that the curriculum and the syllabus and the entire, what you call the framework of a BA education is to change. Teachers are to be mentored like that, not extending from 1 year to 2 years. So ethical foundations in education is to implant in the minds of the teachers. They are to be well trained in that. That has to find its way into the syllabus and into the entire curriculum. That is to transform the society. That is to transform the mindset of the student. Don't look at the student as an object there. You have to look at the student as a bundle of emotions. There is no point in looking at the student sitting in front of you as a cloud of electrons. To produce what you mean, what you understand, the teacher. The teacher is becoming a prophet in that. So that education will definitely fail in creating organic classrooms in that. The student should be able to look at the sun from the point of view. The sun means the sun, S-U-N, sun. From the point of view of a human being, like the mother is, pointing to the sun, making the child sitting on her lap and saying that there does live the sun, the God which gives you light and energy. At the same time, you should have the consciousness to look at the sun from the point of view of a nuclear scientist, considering the nuclear, what you call the scenario, the type of things, things that's happening in the sun, the nuclear fusion. So the thing is that approaches are there. Look at the point of view of a scientist, nuclear scientist. At the same time, like the point of view of a mother who is giving food to the child in that sense. So this sensibility of looking at the same aspect from two varied perspectives, one humanistic and the other tech-centric scientific perspective, is to be enmeshed to make the student survive, to make the student get educated with the best health, what you call parameters or value system. Thank you, Joshi, for your question. It was a very lengthy question. I am sorry that I took much time for responding. And I value very much I value very much the questions and the participants who ask questions. Because these kind of questions and interactive sessions will definitely take you to a different terrain of, what I call scholastic engagements, which will lead to a fine-tuning, socially responsible production of socially responsible production of knowledge. Thank you all. Tony, I have answered. I have responded to questions.
Yes, I am waiting for Gigi sir. Okay, I think he has some problems with the internet connections.
I think he is unconnected with the
I take this
connected.
opportunity to thank. Yes. I think he has been some problem with his network. I thank Sebastian sir for your wonderful lecture. Hope we will meet you again in a seminar in the near future after this pandemic. And I thank all the participants joined here. There are many participants from outside Kerala, even from Maldives, London, Ireland, and I thank all for this wonderful participation and question answer discussions. I think we are in the third of the series, and this was the longest discussion section we had, and it's because of the participants. You were wonderful, and sir, thank you once again on behalf of St. Mary's College.